Welcome to Life of Legacy, your key to a better life. I'm your host, Jonathan Lawrence Clark, and today we have with us business executive and executive coach Alicia Thompson, who's experienced marketing executive, but also prides herself on helping others advance their careers at all levels, with the emphasis on some of the senior level leaders within organizations. Alicia, thank you so much for coming with us today on Life of Legacy.
Thank you. I'm excited to have this conversation. I think it couldn't be more relevant now than it has been in any period of time in our
Yeah.
history. So,
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. So we're going to focus a lot today on work, happiness at work, fulfillment, how to advance in your career, and what the keys are to having a successful career, right? So I think that's a very relevant topic now. A lot of people in the workforce have been impacted by layoffs. They're finding themselves looking for a new opportunity. Some people just aren't happy where they are. And so they're feeling stuck. They don't know how to make a change, or maybe they want to make the most of their current employer or their current opportunity, but they don't know how to do that, right? So whether you wanting to do something different, climb where you are, find another company, another role, change careers altogether, whatever that is, you have to have a plan and there's an approach to doing that, right? So we
yep.
want to talk about some of those things today. But first, I want to talk about just general happiness and fulfillment at work. All
Okay.
right. Uh, the average employee, this is a statistic that I found, right? Research shows that the average employee spends 90,000 hours at work in their lifetime, which is
A
a
lot.
which is the a third of the average lifespan, right? So that said, if you're miserable at your job, the odds of you being happy in general
Yes.
go down significantly, right?
Right.
So that's why it's so important to have work you enjoy and to have a positive work life, because it has so much impact on your overall well-being and happiness in life. And we haven't even gotten into being able to provide for your family. What are
Right.
you earning? And the survival aspect and the livelihood aspect and your lifestyle and those kind of things, right?
Yep.
So that being said, let's talk a little bit about happiness, right? So, according to this same study, 49% of employees say they're happy in their current job, which is less than half.
Right.
Why are so many people unhappy in their jobs, Alicia?
Everybody says don't blame it on the pandemic, but I think the pandemic plays a role in this, right? Because I think that during the pandemic, it threw everybody's world into chaos and people had a shift in their mindset and they started to question what's most important in my world. Is
Okay.
it family? Is it work? Is it purpose? Whatever it is, but people started to question their reality
Hmm.
coming out of the pandemic.
Okay.
And in doing so, many of them realized that they didn't have a purpose in
Hmm.
work. And when you were talking earlier about, happiness, I often ask my clients, what is happiness? Define happiness for me, for you. What does happiness look like for you? Because I think in the workspace, I'm a true believer that you have to have a purpose. You have to go to work to do something beyond just collecting a paycheck, or it gets really old, really stale, really boring, really negative very quickly. And
Yeah.
so I think you need a reason to get up and then you needed to do everything that you do every morning. And I think people are unhappy because they don't have a purpose.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. So, very important to have clarity about why you're doing what you're doing,
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
absolutely. If you don't, then you're just a hamster on a wheel. You're just
Yeah.
going to work every day. You're doing the exact same thing, the exact same practices, the exact same things that your boss is asking you. And then you come home at the end of the day and you say, what did I do today? What did
Yeah.
I accomplish?
Yeah. Very
You
true.
check the boxes, but that all life is? Checking boxes? I don't think so. That's not the kind of life I want to lead.
Yeah, when you say it like that, it does feel it doesn't feel very exciting to talk
No.
about checking boxes. I know that's part of what we do, right? But
Yeah.
it can't be the heart of what we do.
It's balance. Life is about balance, right? There'll be ebbs and flows. There'll be positive, there'll be highlights, there'll be lowlights, but you want to balance it out so it kind of just middle of the road.
Okay, okay. And we're going to get into a couple of generational questions in just a second, but the concept of purpose, it's a relatively modern concept though, right? In terms of purpose at work, because our parents and grandparents really didn't talk about it
No.
much. And not that it wasn't important, maybe they just didn't realize, and things evolve over time, right?
Yeah.
So we look for more and we expect more out of our careers now than in the past, which is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who is struggling with that concept of purpose and doesn't really understand what that means or how to find it?
You know, I think it's important that you start with what are your core values? What are the things that in your life keep you grounded and keep you focused on the outcomes that you want to have in life? And then you have to figure out what excites me? What am I passionate about? Because
Hmm.
I think, somebody will say, "Oh, I'm passionate about art," but I'm a technologist. Like I don't understand how those two fit together. There are ways to connect the dots
Yeah,
so that your passion comes through in your day-to-day activity. But
yeah,
I think it's really about figuring out what keeps you grounded and what gets you excited, where your passions lie, and finding the blend between those two. And purpose, look, I didn't figure out my purpose till I was probably 20 years or so into my career
oh
because
wow,
it wasn't a focus. Wasn't a focus. Purpose wasn't anything I was thinking about early on.
yeah,
But as I started to do my job and what triggered it for me was managing people.
yeah,
When I started managing people, I realized I want these people to be their absolute best.
hmm,
My purpose is to nurture and grow them and coach them and mentor them, which is how I ended up where I am today in coaching.
okay, okay, got it. Yeah, and you know what? I think a little bit to your point, when I think about purpose from even from my perspective, or when I'm coaching with someone, we talk about what is it that, well, first of all, what are your gifts? What are you good
Hmm.
at? What are the things you do well with relative ease? Not that you don't have to maximize those skills and get training,
Yep.
but the things that come easier to you, even thinking back to school, what subjects were you good in
Yeah.
versus others and that kind of thing, right? So what are you good at? What professions will allow you to spend more time in your sweet spot
Yes.
and maximize your skills? And then from a personal perspective, what do you care about? Like, what are you passionate about?
Yes.
Uh, and is there a way you can leverage your skills to help others? For me, like I like to help people avoid hurdles and pitfalls that I've had. And so that's where the coaching thing comes in, is helping
Yeah.
teach people how they can have a better outcome than I had faster and learn from experience and things I've been through and things that I've learned and just pass it down. And I think that's why some people mentor, right?
Yeah.
So
One,
that,
two, one of the things I say all the time to people is let my hindsight be your force for your sight.
oh, I love
Don't make the
that.
same mistakes I made. So I'm going to teach you about the mistakes I made so that you don't make them. And it advances your path and your journey that much faster.
That's a good one. Let my hindsight be your foresight. Okay. You said it much simpler than how I said it. I like that. I like that. So back to we talked about purpose being a modern concept, right? So that kind
Yep.
of leads me to another question. Is it harder or easier to be happy at work now than when our parents and grandparents were in the workforce?
That's a complex question. My mom spent 30 years in corporate America, so I would love to have asked her this question looking at my brother and I versus her career. I think it comes down to perceptions. And what are your perceptions of happiness? Since what our parents and grandparents may have defined as happiness likely looks very different than what we aspire to be or happiness for us today. Um, First of all, they didn't have the salaries we have in most cases. So that looked different from them, the financial implications of it. We have things like flexibility that they didn't have. My mom and I
Okay.
were joking that for years, people at UPS had to wear pantyhose. All the women had to wear pantyhose. Like, what? That's crazy. That's crazy. People would quit their jobs if you made them wear pantyhose now. And that is a very recent change. I think only in the last decade have they gotten rid of the pantyhose thing. Anyway, I
Okay.
digress.
Okay.
But flexibility. They also don't have the different levels of competition, right? The competitive nature of the workforce today is much higher. They also don't have the connectivity that we have. We all have a phone, we have our email on our phone and our laptop.
Yes.
People can get us at any moment.
Yeah.
Um, and so I don't know that I can actually answer that question because I think the worlds are so different
So different.
that again, but I think it goes down to what do they, how did they define happiness versus how we define happiness. I would think that
Yeah.
maybe our definition of happiness is a little bit more materialistic
Oh,
because I think our definition of success is very different than our parents and our definitely our grandparents' definition of success. So I think it's all kind of a continuum
mm,
that has just evolved.
okay. I think our parents and grandparents' idea of success was more stability oriented.
Yes,
Ours is probably more status oriented.
yes.
Would you agree with that?
I would definitely agree with that. I mean, my great great grandfather was a farmer. My grandfather
Oh,
he laid tile. He laid tile. That's what he did in company. And he'd say, if you ever go to the Bank of America building in Charlotte, I laid the tile in the executive bathroom. And I was like, but he bragged about that because that was huge for
that was
him,
awesome.
and I'm just like, that's just crazy. So when I
Yeah.
think about it, yeah, I think it's definitely they were stability. Parents stayed at careers for 30 years.
Yes.
We don't, or very few of us do. It's
Yeah.
it's just all it's just all
It's
relative.
much different. But you
Yeah,
know what? They did those things to pave the way so that we would have more choices.
they did.
Yeah. So that
They
we would have
did.
education and be more empowered in our careers. And we're going to talk about career empowerment a little bit later.
Yeah,
But we owe a lot of gratitude and thank you to those who came before
absolutely.
us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Outstanding. Great conversation. So let's go back to a few of these statistics, right?
Okay.
Because I think they're interesting. So, uh, also citing some more workplace statistics, 55% of Americans claim work exhaustion. 45% of workers relate their weight gain to their current job.
We
And then
sit all the time.
we sit a lot. Well, not everybody, but a lot of us do.
A lot of people.
And then 44% of US women would leave their job for the sake of having more flexibility,
Mm,
right? So when
yeah,
we look at all those exhaustion, fatigue, wanting more flexibility, health implications that people attribute to work. Given these stats, do you think there's a climate of overwork and stress in today's workforce?
absolutely. I felt it. I know some of my peers and former colleagues have felt it. Look, I think the current environment of doing more with less. So you have smaller teams, but the workload doesn't change.
Yeah,
You've got the competition that I talked about earlier, the technology and the constant connectivity of just being on all the time,
always on. Yeah,
always on, never turning off. And, I said, I have rules. If you go to dinner with me, you got to put your cell phone up because we're not going to sit it on the table. We're not going to sit it on the dinner table. I'm not doing that.
that's a great rule. That's a great rule. Now you get a little rebellion when you try to institute that rule. People
Yeah.
aren't happy about it.
Exactly. But all of these things and a lot more have created a really stressful environment where, to my point, we're always on. We feel a need to respond in the moment, not let things, you can't take an hour and a half break, really? That's crazy.
Yeah,
Um, and so I think it's given workers a greater flexibility in the ability to better integrate their work with their home life by working from home.
hmm,
And it's cultivated a culture where, you know, seeing each other and building relationships doesn't happen anymore. So that takes away the personal element of the work world, which you used to get, hey, how was your weekend? You do the 15 minutes at the coffee machine. Now
yeah,
that doesn't happen because your coffee machine's in your kitchen. You come upstairs and you jump right in. And so I
yeah.
think all of these things have created an environment that I don't like to call it toxic, but it has become very untenable and challenging to be in. And that
Yeah.
creates even greater stress for all of
Okay.
us.
In terms of responsibility for happiness, so does the company or the employee bear most of the responsibility for the employee satisfaction at work?
So I'm going to probably irritate some people out there who will disagree with me, but I really think it's the employee's responsibility to find fulfillment at work. I think everyone should take ownership or agency of their career and set the roadmap for where they want to go, what they want to do, how they want to show up. and it's in the company's best interest to then support them in their efforts, that's their way of retaining the best talent. But at the end of the day, I have always believed that it was my responsibility to determine how I was going to engage with my workplace and where I was going to find fulfillment.
Okay.
And that's just my mind. I just don't think you can turn that responsibility over to someone else.
Yeah. It's a lot of power to give somebody else
It
over
is.
your career. We talked about how much time you spend at work and how important it is to have a positive career experience. So
Right.
if you're handing the reins to that over to your manager, over to the business,
Yep.
that's a lot of power to give somebody over your life, right? It's
Yep.
basically it's important for each person to take control and ownership over their career in the direction of their career.
Yeah. That's my the deepest belief. And again, because your fulfillment at work should be tied to your purpose. Who's determining your purpose? You are,
You are.
not
Okay.
your company.
Okay. So let's talk about if the employee is really responsible for taking ownership. We're saying they're driving. We're not saying that there aren't factors
Right.
from the organization, from your manager that influence your career experience and your success because there are, right? However, if you're the driver, you're in the driver's seat for your career, um, what are some good practices to adopt to ensure you have that strong fulfillment, the advancements you're looking for? What are some good practices to take to make sure you're fully leveraging the company, your relationship with your manager to maximize your success? How do you go about doing that?
So I'm a big believer in setting career goals, and you should evolve them every year. And you should have conversations, very open, frank conversations with your manager about what your goals are.
Okay.
I think some people are concerned about doing that because if their manager doesn't see those goals being fulfilled within that particular role or within that particular company, people feel like that puts them on the list of potential chopping block folks. But again, you have to take agency over your own career, and we're not all meant to stay at a company for 40 years. It's not good for in some cases it may not be right for the company, and in some cases it may not be right for you. But taking responsibility and then setting those career goals, defining what success looks like for you, and having specific measurable goals that help you keep focus is important. And then I am a big believer in being a lifelong learner. You have to constantly be growing and expanding your toolkit, your tool set, and making sure that you are learning new things so that you can stay competitive and you can remain engaged, because again, you don't want to just get stuck in a rut. And the one
Yeah.
of the easiest ways to not do that is to continue to be growing and developing yourself. So invest in yourself. Other people think, oh well, the company will invest in me. May or may not. that
Okay.
that could be completely separate and maybe a company thing. But I think if companies see you investing yourself, they're definitely supportive of it, and actually in some cases may be more likely to support you in allowing you to do some professional development. You can take courses, workshops, conferences,
Yeah.
get a mentor, all of these things. But I think you should all constantly be investing in your own growth through learning opportunities. I can't say that enough.
Okay. So I heard you said goals, right? But I'm gonna take that another notch up and say clarity.
Clarity.
Because the goals come when you're clear about what you want, right?
Yep.
Where are you going? And some people get stuck there because
Yep.
they really don't know a lot about what they want. Some people end up in a profession almost by accident,
Yeah.
uh, often not aligned with what they majored in. They ended up in some role and started making money and really never thought about how to pivot out of it. And 20 to 30 years later, they're like, how can I get out of this? I don't like this anymore. I don't even know how I got here. And now they want to try to figure out where they really fit, right?
Yeah.
So getting that clarity is important because a lot of people don't have it and have no idea of how to get it. And that's why it's important to have somebody, a coach, a mentor to kind of help guide you through that, who has the knowledge about how you can figure that out and work your way through that, right?
Yeah.
But goals, you need goals, but to have goals, you need clarity, right? What do you want? What are you aiming for? What's your purpose? those kind of things. Then you said communication. Make sure you're keeping the lines of communication open with your
Yep.
manager about what you want, what you're aiming for. Understand also, you need to understand the business in that
Yes,
conversation too, Alicia, because what you're aspiring to do might not have a place in that business or that company.
exactly.
It might not be a company. It might not have a place in the industry almost. Like you have to think about the purpose and the things that you want to achieve. How does it align with where you are? And
Right.
do you need to pivot and how you go about making a transition if you need to? But that starts with having a conversation about it and being willing to have that talk with your leader. And we'll come back to that in
Right.
just a second. And then you said learning and development, making sure you're constantly growing. World is
Hmm.
constantly changing. Skill sets become obsolete in a heartbeat.
Yep.
We know AI is on the horizon. AI is here. It's not on the horizon.
Yes, it's
We know
here.
we know AI is here and it's not going anywhere. That's another thing on people's mind. Make sure you keep growing, keep evolving, and staying agile as far as your learning and development. So those are your top three keys, right?
Yep, that's it.
All right. So that being said, let's go back to the manager communication part.
Hmm.
So where's my statistic? Give me just a second here. My screensaver came on. My iPad notes. All right. So another interesting statistic: 58% of managers received no manager training before they became managers. That I found that to be an interesting statistic, right?
Oh yeah,
So that being said, managers becoming managers with no training, great individual contributors, great at doing the day-to-day job. Hey, we want you to be a manager. You're a top
exactly.
performer, right? We want you to
Exactly.
teach, we want you to teach other people how to be as good as you are at your job, right? Totally different skill set.
For sure.
Managing other people's careers, teaching them and training them, dealing with different personalities and getting them to perform and meet objectives and complete projects. Totally different skill set than doing the work, right?
Right.
But 58% no training. So, how much of employees' issues at work are because of having poor managers? And I'm not saying I don't want to say it in a derogatory way toward the person, but unskilled managers, managers who are not trained or equipped to lead other people.
Oh yeah, I believe a significant part of employee I'm going to call it discontent, for lack of a better word, is due to poor management. It does a disservice to both the manager, because it's not fair to put somebody in a role, not train them, and
Mhm.
it also does a disservice to the employee. And most of us never received management training, because I don't really know what that looks like. And then, so we don't get management training, so we learn on the job and we make mistakes and
Yeah.
we figure it out along the way. But
Yeah.
look how many people we've impacted
Yes.
while we were on the job training. It can
Yeah.
be significant.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's management training is one of those things. It's like, what would you train them to do? And I think we know the characteristics of a good manager. The question is, how do you teach those things in a way that actually can be replicated and done? And then
Yes.
you have to sustain it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you individual contributor, you're fantastic. You're a rock star. If I hear that more, then again, I'll scream. You're a rock star. We're going to make you a manager and give you 5 direct reports. And everybody's like, yeah, I'm a manager now. And then they get into it and they go, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm
Yeah.
having problems.
Yeah. And they might question whether they're a good fit to be a manager
Right.
without even having the training to be a good manager, right? So
Yeah.
they're making their assessment based on doing it untrained
Yep.
and decide maybe I'm not a good fit for this. Maybe I don't need to be a leader at all, but they might be wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe with the right training, they could be a great leader. Not to say everybody needs to lead other people, because I don't believe that's the case.
No.
Some people are better off being individual contributors and they're great at what they do, and they should just kind of stay in that lane, and that's fine.
Yep.
But let's at least give people a swinging chance to be able to be successful leaders and provide them with some resources. You can't a lot Most of their training and becoming of a good manager is going to happen on the job. We know that,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
You can't teach it all. You teach
No.
principles, you give tools, and now you apply those, and someone has to be there to guide them in the application of the principles and tools in the workplace as they grow as a leader.
Yeah.
But at least they're starting with something in that situation, right?
Sure. For
I,
sure. And this
I
is
think,
where imposter syndrome comes in. I deal with a lot of clients with imposter syndrome, right? And they're questioning, am I good enough? Do I know what I'm doing? And I'm like, well, it's hard to answer that question because nobody ever gave you the tools. That's problem number one.
yeah. Yeah, problem number one. So big gap that needs to be closed.
Yeah.
Definitely need more manager training for those that are going to enter leadership to give them a better opportunity to be effective, right? They're affecting the entire workforce in terms of everybody that's under them is getting affected by
Yes.
this, and their overall happiness and fulfillment of their teams are largely influenced by how they lead, right? So definitely a
Yes.
big factor there. All right, so no, separate question. So we're talking about training for leadership positions for managers and how a lot of times that's non-existent, right? So let's say you're already a manager and you're needing to grow or wanting to grow in that area, right? How do you go about getting the training you need if you're already in the seat and you're trying to grow and become a better leader, but you don't feel supported by your manager and your company, or that they're providing adequate training and resources for you? And I guess the answer would be the same for any employee who wanted to advance or take control of their development, which that was that third point that
Hmm.
you mentioned. If you want to be empowered and take control of your growth, how could you do that if you don't feel like you're getting supported by your leader or your company?
Yeah. So first thing I'd say is you're a manager, but you don't feel comfortable being a manager, right? You don't think that you're effective. One of the things I recommend to my clients is think about the manager that you had that you felt was the best manager you ever had. And think about the characteristics that they displayed, and then look for opportunities to develop in those spaces. There's a million, you can Google any kind of free course you want around communication, around emotional intelligence, around, all of the characteristics that you might identify. Believe me, there is a YouTube video or a course out there that you can take. Start there, right? That's a baseline. That's easy. Doesn't cost your company anything, doesn't cost you anything. And then once you set a foundation there, then you can build on that. And again, Udemy, Coursera, all of these different entities out there that do online trainings,
Hmm.
you can figure it out and you can start to build your own repertoire of training and development. And then hopefully, as your manager in your company starts to see you evolve as a manager, then there will be an opportunity for them to take you into some kind of a training program. But don't ever forget that most companies have um, internal groups and programs that have mentoring and all of those types of things. Take advantage of every one of those that is available because there is an opportunity to grow and develop through those.
Okay,
And it costs the company nothing.
and that's a good point because you might think there's nothing there and you might feel unsupported.
Yeah.
Maybe there's resources out there that your manager hasn't told you about, right? Within your own company. So
Right.
back to empowerment, ask
Yep.
questions. And that starts with having
Yes.
conversations, right? And if your manager is not answering those questions, it's important to network and be connected with other people in the organization that you can ask questions about development opportunities as well. If they're
Yep.
not telling you, you might have to kind of go around, not in a going over the head type of way, but just make sure you're taking advantage of all the avenues for information.
Yeah.
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 Okay. And outside of that, from a personal standpoint, you're saying there's so much technology out there, there's really no excuse for
There's
not
no excuse.
for not taking charge and going out there and doing your own homework and research, because there's training classes that you can take on your own that are not expensive.
Yeah.
Udemy and Coursera are very economically friendly, so
Mhm.
you can leverage those, and then YouTube's out there. Then you can use AI and Google the top skills and all types of things. So take
Yeah.
initiative, be resourceful.
Absolutely. Be
Yeah,
resourceful. And remember, there are very few times in life that we're encouraged to be selfish. When it comes to your own growth and career management,
yeah,
you get to be selfish. It's all about you,
yeah.
right? You get to develop those skills that are most important to you and will help you along your career journey. So,
There you go. There you go. I love it. All right. Still want to talk about leadership a little bit, right? So
okay.
let's talk about the people who are aspiring leaders that
Yeah.
might not be there yet. So what are the most critical skills and qualities for someone to demonstrate who's an aspiring leader to show that they're prepared for leadership? Because some people don't understand this, but you get promoted when you demonstrate the qualities and ability to be a leader,
Yeah.
right? You don't, well, ideally, we talked about some people getting promoted before they're ready, right?
Yeah.
But in an ideal situation, your leader will look for you to demonstrate the qualities of leadership before you get promoted into it.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you, what are the top skills and qualities that you should demonstrate if you're aspiring to get promoted into leadership?
Okay. These are mine. Not speaking for anybody else, but I think these are the ones that are most critical and the ones that I see that are most impactful in my coaching work. Um, the first one is critical thinking and decision making.
Okay.
People want to see that you can think through a problem, you can look at it from all angles and come up with solutions. So critical thinking, being able to break apart a problem and
Okay.
then come up with a solution. Second thing is communication. You got to be able to clearly and effectively articulate, convey a vision, provide feedback, inspire your team members. So communication skills is the
Okay.
second thing, I think.
Okay.
The third one, I think, is accountability.
Oh,
People need to know that you will take responsibility for your actions and your reactions, and that you will follow through on your commitments. That goes to individual leadership and management of a team, but that also is around collaboration, right? You never want to be on a collective team or integrated team where you're not taking responsibility for your actions. Emotional intelligence is another one. And I think this is one that everybody thinks they're emotionally intelligent, but they're not, because emotional intelligence is really about the ability to understand and manage both your emotions as well as those of others. And I think it's critical that you learn to do that, because that's where empathy comes in.
hmm.
That's where inspiring and supporting your team comes in. So emotional intelligence is really, really important. And then another one I think we found ourselves in coming out of the pandemic, probably before, is this idea of adaptability, because the world is changing at breakneck speed, and you have to be able to adjust to the changing circumstances, and you have to remain flexible, and you have to be able to pivot at the drop of a dime in the face of challenges that are crucial to the business,
Yeah.
but that may come out of left field that were not anticipated or expected.
Okay. Wow. All right. So those are some good ones. So I'm gonna recap: critical thinking,
Yep.
communication skills,
Hmm.
accountability,
Yep.
emotional intelligence, and then adaptability.
Yeah. And those would be my top five there.
Okay.
Probably have a list of 20, but for the purposes of this podcast, I would say that those are, for me, again, just in my work, the
Yeah.
top five that are important and have the greatest impact on you
Okay.
as a leader and
Okay.
your ability to impact a team.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. Great. And then let's talk about the difference between being an effective senior leader versus like a mid-level manager. So same question, similarly, but looking for distinction between
Hmm.
those early to mid-level leaders and
Yeah.
senior leaders. What are the key skills and traits that you would see in a senior leader that would show somebody's senior leader material?
So I hate this word and I love this word all at the same time, strategic. How many times have you been in a situation where you were reviewed and somebody said you're not strategic enough? You
Yeah.
want to say, what does strategy mean? Somebody please define what strategic means for me. But I think one of the biggest delineation points between a middle manager and a senior manager is strategic vision, and
Okay.
not just being able to see the bigger picture and developing the long-term strategy that aligns with the organizational plans and growth and business needs, but then being able to communicate that vision in a way that you inspire your team to get on board and want to help bring that vision to life,
That's
right?
huge.
So
Yeah.
that is the biggest thing, because it moves you from tactical, understanding the strategy and being able to deliver it from a tactical perspective, to actually setting the strategy, because you've taken into consideration all of the elements of the business needs to
Okay.
develop the strategic vision.
Yeah.
The second one I'd say is influence and the ability to persuade. So effective senior leaders have an ability to inspire and motivate others to embrace their vision,
Mhm.
to leverage their influence, and then they drive change across the organization. And influence is one of the skills that comes with time. A lot of people think, oh, I can, I got so-and-so's ear. You hear that a lot. I got her ear.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can have their ear, but does that mean you can really influence their decision?
Okay.
And behind influence is comes a um, strong sense of understanding the business and being able to see the big picture. It goes back to that strategic vision, right? When you can
Okay.
see the bigger picture and
Okay.
you can articulate it, then you can influence other people's decisions because you've got the data and the insights behind it, whatever you're saying, to change their minds. And then senior leaders are really good or should be really good at crisis management
Ooh.
because they're going to, at that level, they're going to be navigating complex challenges in the organization and making decisions often under pressure. That's where the emotional intelligence comes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, whereas the mid-level manager may be more focused on the day-to-day execution of a crisis plan, the senior leaders are actually making the tough decisions and telling you what the plan actions need to be.
Right. Okay. Man, that was big. And I hope you all understand like the type of information you're getting right here because this is huge in terms of being an effective senior leader. And there's so many leaders that don't know that they didn't know they needed to have these skills, right? They
Yeah.
didn't realize how much these things play a role in their effectiveness as leaders at that level. But I can fully vouch for what she's saying. These are critically important once you get to that level. All of them, strategic thinking, the inspiring, buy-in, influence of peers, influence
Yep.
horizontally,
Hmm.
vertically as well, right? Up and down. So all the way around, you have to be able to influence,
And
right?
it goes back to this training, right? We don't teach people how to manage at middle management, senior management. We don't do it. It's on the job training. And
Yeah,
so that's why so many leaders don't know that these things are really, really pivotal.
yeah. And then the crisis management, all the other things that you mentioned tied to the crisis management too.
Hmm.
The influence, the strategic thinking, yep, and the inspiring.
Yeah,
They all connect to the crisis management too. So when we talk about influence, speaking of, right, how important is your personal branding within the organization as far as your influence? Because if you haven't been mindful about your personal brand up until that point, your ability to influence could be largely a factor of the relationships that you've built up until that point.
yes,
So can you talk about the connection between those two things?
sure. Personal branding is also extremely important. Personal branding can be defined many ways, but for me, it's as simple as you are known for doing what you say and saying what you do. Just you can just keep it that simple. That is
Yeah.
your personal brand. People can rely on you. People know that you will always come to the table prepared, having thought things through clearly, and are ready to take action, right? And so another way of thinking about personal brand is what are people saying about you when you're not in the room?
Hmm.
And you want to make sure that what they are saying about you when you are not in the room are the things that you want to be known for. And when you are have be in a not in a room and people are saying things about you, then they know you are a go-to person. That is influence. If
Oh,
people come to you for your insights, for your perspective, for your opinion, for your thoughts, that is influence
oh, wow. Okay.
because you have a voice that they think is critically important to the conversation, and they want to make sure that your voice is heard.
Okay. Wow. That's pretty good. And then value alignment, making sure your personal brand is aligned with your values. I think is
Absolutely.
important too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Your values should come through in your personal brand.
Yeah.
If you are a person whose one of your values is honesty and integrity, your personal brand, people should, when they describe you, should say she's one of the most honest people with the highest level of integrity that I've ever met.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 dots, they cross, they're perfect. You want to be known for your values.
Yeah. Yeah.
because you live them every day.
Yep. And that brings us back to intentionality again.
Exactly.
The part of it being empowered, an empowered
Yes.
professional is making sure you're thinking about these things proactively, and making sure you behave in alignment because there's going to be days you're emotional.
Yeah.
You don't feel like being diplomatic. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be that. You still have to maintain your composure and still be
Yeah.
able to do those things because you're in the workplace and you have a brand that you're looking after and you're staying aligned with your values, but you don't feel like being aligned with your values every day. Uh,
No,
if you're not intentional, you can easily damage everything you've built in a heartbeat.
just like that.
In a heartbeat, just like that. With one action, you can damage everything you've built reputationally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that goes for organizations too.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
All right. So that being said, we've talked about all these great tips and keys to being an effective leader at different levels, right? So you're
Hmm.
an executive coach,
Hmm.
and your job is to help leaders, and some of these leaders that we've been talking to today that didn't get the training and things that they needed, and they're sitting in the seat and they're trying to be the best they can be, and they're trying to accomplish their goals, and they come to you and they say, Alicia, I'm treading water here. I'm trying to get to the next level. I'm trying to grow in these areas. I'm stuck, right? I don't know what to do.
Yep.
What is your role as an executive coach in helping those leaders perform in current seat, but
Mhm.
also reach their goals?
Yeah. So my focus as executive coach, executive coaching is all around self-awareness, right? We are helping to uncover and make you aware of your strengths, your weaknesses, your threats and opportunities, right? My goal is to uncover and refine the leadership style that's purpose driven, value centered, and it's aligned with the demands of today's world, your team, your organization, whatever. And my goal is to empower leaders to gain clarity and confidence so that they can lead their teams effectively and efficiently and have an impact on the organization. Um, my philosophy, every one of us has a different philosophy. My philosophy and approach is client centric, and it's because I think every single person has a unique story. Everybody has a story to tell that's been driven by their past, but also, and I like to say, is more driven and focused on what their future will look like.
Okay.
And I want to help leaders figure out how to impact and transform not only their own personal and professional journey, but those of the journeys of the people that they lead and they love. So
Okay.
that's personal and professional.
Okay. Okay. And so, with you specifically, because we know, there's a ton of options out there for executive coaches. If I'm going to work with Alicia specifically, what's unique about working with you that you bring to the table, or what can I expect in my relationship with you that might be a little different from other executive coaches?
I think one of the things that I bring to the table is 30 plus years of corporate experience. And I lean into that to again help my clients avoid the pitfalls that I have suffered along the way. So I'm letting my hindsight be their foresight and keeping them out of trouble.
Yeah.
And I am also a leader, a coach that leads and lets empathy guide, right? I have to meet my clients where they are.
Okay.
And I have clients across the entire spectrum from partners and senior vice presidents and CEO executive level C-suite exec to managers trying to become a director and
Yeah.
everything in between. And
Okay.
it's important for me to meet them where they are and to help them figure out what their signature leadership style should be based on their values, based on their goals, based on who they are as a person, and then helping them figure out how to manifest that. There are coaches that focus literally. I have a peer coach. She only focuses on helping people be strategic. That's it. Nothing more. She don't want you to talk to her about your career. No,
Okay.
not strategic thinking.
Okay.
She's not helping you. And so there is a wide spectrum of coaches out there. I also think it's important that you connect with your coach on a personal level.
Okay.
You have to feel like your coach understands you,
Yeah.
your needs, and I tell you to shop around. I do 30-minute, call them chemistry check calls.
Okay.
We just need to make sure if we're going to work and if you think I'm the right person to help you fulfill your ultimate goals.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Fit is important for sure.
Critical.
Yeah. And with everything you mentioned today in terms of like key skills for different leadership levels, I can tell you your phone would probably be ringing off the hook with leaders out there because I know I've talked to managers, I've talked to leaders of different levels who are they're trying to get a leader that they manage to build these skills and
Yes.
learn how to do these things effectively, and it's critical to some of the work and projects that they're trying to complete.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a need for it to have you fill in, especially in these organizations that may not be as robust in their learning and development for leaders.
Yeah.
So hats off to you for providing such a very needed service and taking all those years of experience and passing it on to future leaders who can then multiply themselves down.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because we were talking about purpose. I truly, truly, in my heart of hearts, feel this is my purpose. I know that the 30 years of corporate experience I have prepared me for this, and that this is what I am supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and I can feel that from you too.
Yeah.
I really, really do. And it seems like this kind of culmination is giving meaning to everything you've built up until
Yes.
now. Would that be accurate?
That is so accurate. And now all makes sense. Before it was like, this doesn't make sense. But now it all does. It all
Yeah.
does.
So
Yeah.
that should give hope to some other people out there because you're probably going through some things right now that you'd rather not, and you don't know how you got there.
Yeah.
But a lot of those experiences will be leveraged when you figure it out and you find out what your purpose is. You'll leverage all those experiences in helping somebody else. I can almost bank on that, I think. Yeah.
Yep. I say trust in your journey. It is not for naught.
It's not for naught. And that's a perfect segue into talking about personal goals, right?
Yep.
And personal empowerment. Because yes, we've talked about empowerment in your career, which is important, right?
Hmm.
But it's also important to be empowered in your personal life with
Absolutely.
your personal goals for family,
Hmm.
for other things you want to achieve outside of work, right? Whether it's
Yep.
being an entrepreneur, for finances, all those different things outside of work that are important to you, right? So if I were to ask you, Alicia, what are the keys to being empowered in your personal life? What would you say those are?
So I think this one crosses over from personal to professional. Is having a clear goal. Know exactly what it is that you aspire to do
Okay.
and just be clear. Clarity around that is important because you don't know what you're working toward if it's not clear.
Okay.
Um, Managing your sense of um, support, right? If you have insufficient support for your goals in your personal world, that like if your whole family is not aligned, or if you're a partner and you are not aligned, it's a 50% failure rate, right? If you
Oh,
can't
wow.
go it alone, you can't
Yeah.
go it alone. You have to have the right support.
Yeah.
Um, I think setting boundaries is absolutely critical in the personal world because we sometimes give families
Mm,
give them a pass when they ask or push or nudge or don't do what we expect them to do. You got
hmm
to set boundaries. You got to learn to say no, even to those you love, even if it hurts you, it hurts them. But if it's not the right thing to do, you need to be able to say no, and you need to be consistent. Consistency with with your boundaries is absolutely critical. And finally, I would say from a personal goal setting perspective, you have to believe in yourself and have consistent motivation. You have to figure out a way to maintain enthusiasm over time because it can get difficult. You're going to run up against brick walls. You have to be resilient and figure out how to work around those walls and keep your eye focused on the prize for sure.
wow. Okay. Okay. And help me out here because I heard I got goals, boundaries, and enthusiasm, and there was one after goals.
Boundaries,
I got it.
goals,
Okay.
support.
Support. That
having
was
the
the
right
one.
support network, having a
That was the
support
one.
network.
That was the one
Yeah.
I was looking for because
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah.
Okay. Goals, support, boundaries, and enthusiasm.
Hmm.
So I'm putting myself in the mind of the listener, right?
Hmm.
Um, those are all true, all critical. So if I'm trying to figure out how to go about making sure I have these things so that I'm
Hmm.
more empowered, let's say I'm the person that feels like I don't have any support. Let's say I'm married, my spouse doesn't get it, they don't understand.
Yep.
Every time I talk to my friends about it, they make me feel like I'm not good enough for it, or make me feel like I'm ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
How do you go about getting support when you feel like it's not intrinsically surrounding you?
Yeah. So I am a big believer in the concept I call the board of directors. I use it
Okay.
in my work world for sure, but it also applies in your personal world. It is a group of people outside of your normal comfort zone that are like-minded.
Okay.
You can find them. I know this sounds crazy. You can find them on Facebook. You can find them on LinkedIn. There's somebody out there always that shares a common interest.
Okay.
And if you find them, you would be amazed how powerfully supportive they can be.
Wow. Okay.
And sometimes going outside of your bubble, you learn some things that you wouldn't because you're not talking to people that talk the same way you talk.
Yeah.
You get a different insight, you get a different perspective. And I think it's important to do that.
Okay.
But like I said, on faith, I know this, I'm telling you, I know it sounds crazy, but there is a Facebook group for everyone
Okay. Okay. So we're back to online.
online, right?
No
And
excuses.
Even in LinkedIn, there are groups of people
Okay.
that have similar purpose, similar career goals that you can connect with and join those groups. And they will be the most supportive people you've ever met. When I went through my coaching program, as soon as we graduated, there was a group on LinkedIn set up. And even though we are in a competitive situation, you have no idea how supportive we are of each other. And we give each other tips for business development and all these things. And you would think we would never do that because we're competing for the same clients.
Right.
Doesn't matter. It's enough out there for everybody. We don't need to be greedy.
That's amazing. That's beautiful, actually,
Yeah,
that you all lean on each other and
we
work
do.
together. That is awesome. And that gives, hopefully that gives people a lot of hope that they can find some support out there too, because that would be a main concern is if I'm trying to interact with people who are doing the same thing I'm doing, are they going to be competitive? Are they not going to want to help me? Are they going to give me bad advice,
Yeah.
to throw my game off and that kind of thing?
Yeah. I went to an event yesterday with a food blogger and content creator, and she's stepping out on faith and launching her personal brand, her brand externally. And yesterday was her first event. And I would say of the 40 of us that were at the event, at least half of them were also content creators. They were taking content and posting her event on their pages. That is
That is awesome.
powerful. Yeah, it was amazing. It was
So
great.
powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful. All right. So hopefully you have hope. If you're somebody that feels like you have no
Don't give
support,
up.
don't give up. Don't give up. Reach out there. And if you don't know how to do it, call Alicia. Uh, all right. You talked about boundaries. Let's talk about that a little more. Because you talked about family
Hmm.
and putting up boundaries with family. And a lot of people are going to have a problem with that, Alicia. So, uh, the family members, they're people we're around quite a bit, and some of them are toxic, and they're always in our space and always pulling us down and making us feel like we can't do something or they're ridiculous for even thinking about it.
Yep.
So, what are a couple of things a person could do if they need to put a little space between them and a family member or close friend who's holding them back?
So I have a quote that I literally have on my wall that is important to me, and I think it's foundational for this particular topic. And it's Sangeeta Rana, and it goes, "Go where your heart wants to be, where it feels happy and healthy. not heavy or hurt. And I think if you keep that in mind, it helps you to assess those family relationships that may be heavy and hurting and not happy and healthy.
Wow.
And look, at the end of the day, I'm a big believer that everybody can use a little therapy. Therapy is a wonderful thing. There's nothing negative about it. It's a great thing. But even if it's not of official therapy, it can be your minister, it can be someone in your life that you trust to give you good advice, and you need a sounding board. And
Mm,
you need to have someone that you can talk to about these toxic relationships, and they can help to embolden you to say, I'm not doing this anymore because it's not healthy for me. It's
yeah.
again another moment in time when you get to be selfish.
Yeah.
And you get to be selfish because you're protecting yourself.
Yeah.
And when you can protect yourself, that allows you to accomplish great things. When you're not protecting yourself and you're not healthy, mentally, emotionally, whatever, you can't go after all these great professional goals because there's something holding you back.
And I'm going to piggyback off what you said when you're talking about boundaries in terms of making connections with positive influences, whether it's not just a counselor, but a minister, somebody who can give
Mhm.
you good guidance and reaching out to all these different networks. When you start to make positive connections and build positive relationships and start to invest more
Mhm.
time in the positive relationships, you have less time available for the toxic relationships
Correct.
naturally, right? So you have an easy out because I'm busy, I have to go.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to connect with so and so. I've got all this other stuff going on. You start to have less time for the drama as you build
Yes.
those positive connections and positive outlets too, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, very important to keep boundaries and enthusiasm. I'll come back to in just a minute because
Okay.
I'm sure people could use some advice on how to stay encouraged because that's tough to do at times, right?
Yes.
So New Year, there's something called New Year's resolutions at the beginning of every year because now we're talking about personal goals, right? So now we're talking about personal goals and how to achieve personal goals. And every year, people set these things called New Year's resolutions, and they're getting a bad rap now for
I
being.
don't set them.
Yeah, there you go. They've gotten a bad rap for being goals that you set that you don't follow through on. And that's what people consider to be New Year's resolutions. But anyway, the new year is a time when a lot of people reset, right?
Yep.
They look back, they reflect over the last year, what's going the way I want it to go, what's not going so well, what do I want to change? And it's a good time to reset and kind of be renewed, have a fresh start,
Yeah.
pivot, and get recalibrated for what you want to do with your life, right? So, um, the challenge with that is come mid-January, February, a lot of the goals that we set going into the year, we start to fall off and we start to like be inconsistent and we're right back to where we were when we finished the following year, right?
Yep.
So what are some keys to help people stay on track with personal goals? We've talked about professional goals, but as far as personal goals, what are some keys to help people be effective at achieving their personal goals?
Um, I'd say first, make sure I know it's easy to say, oh, I'm going to get into shape. That's so vague, right? So you need SMART goals. They need to be specific.
Okay.
You need to be able to measure them.
Okay.
They must be achievable. Don't set, I'm going to lose 60 pounds by March 1st. That's not possible. They need to be relevant to your life and they
Okay.
need to be time bound. So I'm going to lose 20 pounds by May 1st, right? If this is January, February, March, April, May, that's 4 months. You could lose a pound a week, something like that. I think that's the number. Again, I don't set goals. But yeah, again, they need to be smart. We call them smart, specific, measurable, actionable, achievable, relevant, and time bound.
Okay.
And the clarity and having them be so specific helps you stay focused and motivated because then you're measuring them and you can see how you're tracking against them.
Okay.
The second thing I say is have an action plan, right? You
Okay.
can't just say, okay, I'm going to lose 20 pounds by May 1st. It's like I'm going to do that by going to the gym 3 times a week, right?
Okay.
You got to have an action plan again that you can hold yourself. And the third one is accountable. Got to have something you can measure, track. You have action plan that you can hold yourself accountable to. And I would encourage you to have an accountability partner. Share your goal with someone who can also say, hey, did you make it to the gym 3 times this week? Right? You need somebody that is watching you, or you can join a group of people who have similarly said, we're going to go to the gym 3 times a week. And if one person doesn't show up at the gym, you got a text chain that says, hey, we missed you today. What happened? You were supposed to come. Oh, you're coming Saturday instead of Friday. Okay, just wanted to make sure you were still on track.
Okay. All right. So if somebody hears this and they know they need an accountability partner and they keep their goal a secret, maybe they're looking for an out.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
accountability is important. And that's not to say you specifically are just a person that needs accountability, but everybody needs some level of accountability, right? Just human
Yeah,
nature.
I mean, I think if you look at the data, and I wish I had a number, those that are most successful at meeting their goals, there's an accountability element to it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, that's why you join the gym in January, and by February 15th, you haven't been there the entire month, because there's nobody saying, hey, did you make it to the gym? Or you don't have anybody at the gym that gets used to seeing you come and goes, hey, I missed you this week. Where were you?
Yeah. So it's kind of like using peer pressure in a positive way.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. So smart goals, action plan, and accountability.
Yes.
Love that. Love that. So you talked about how some people don't set goals, right? Or they don't do resolutions. And sometimes that's because a person has become discouraged. They've tried in the past, they failed, things haven't gone the way that they wanted to go. They're just, I'm over it.
Hmm.
My life is a mess right now. I'm over it. There's no point in setting any goals or trying to change everything because nothing's going to change. Nothing ever goes my way, right? What would you say to the person who has been kind of overtaken by discouragement,
Yeah.
and not really doesn't really have the spirit or faith to really even try to set goals to change their life?
Yeah. It reminds me of a comment that I saw in a news article this week for all the folks, unfortunately, that lost everything in California wildfires. And somebody said the worst thing you can say to them is, they're only material things. It's like you
Mhm.
don't understand, right? The loss of
Yeah,
everything that they have, right? So I could be very flippant and say, just be resilient, et cetera, et cetera. That's not true. Failure and discontent and all of those feelings that come along with perceived failure, they're part of the journey, but they're not the end of it, right? These are lessons that we have to learn in order to be best prepared for meeting the goal and the outcome. There's learnings every step of the way. And if you allow the failure to break you, you will never take the moment to absorb the learning,
okay,
right? There's something in every learning that is going to help you.
okay,
Um, and every setback is actually an opportunity to learn and to grow stronger because it builds character. I always say it builds what's the word I use? Scar tissue, right? And
yeah,
then you're toughen up your hands, right? You get calluses from doing things. It toughens up your hands to allow you to do it better. You got to and you also, I would say it's important that you reflect on the progress. Don't ignore the things that you have done that have been successful because there's lessons in that as well.
yeah,
And realize it's okay to feel bad. It's okay to be down in the dumps about it, but you can't let that define you and you can't wallow in it. You got to
yeah,
keep pushing forward. You got to remember that every step, no matter how small, is a step closer to your goal.
yeah,
And if you focus on the positive of it, it will help you work through those times when you're feeling stagnant or you're experiencing those feelings of failure, because they don't let them define you.
yeah. And some of the people that have been through the most massive failures became the
Mhm.
greatest successes.
Absolutely.
And and
Absolutely.
and they'll tell you it was those moments of failure when they didn't know if they were going to get through it, they didn't know if they were going to make it, they didn't know if they were cut out for what they were trying to
Right.
do. It's almost like a breaking point to test you to see if you're really ready to carry what you're trying to
Yes.
get to, right?
Yes.
If
Absolutely.
you're shooting for something big that's massive, there's a preparation process to get you ready for that. And
Right.
sometimes it's not good for you to reach that level of success too fast because
Yeah,
you can't sustain it.
right. And my other thing is, I see a lot of people watching everybody on Instagram. And so, ooh, I want that life. It's made up, people. It's made up. It's an Instagram life. So, in this particular situation, you may see people that it seems like everything goes right for them.
Hmm.
And they've they hit the lottery. They got what they wanted, the first bat out. Don't live your life through them. You guys
Yeah.
are on different journeys.
Yes.
You need to stay focused on yours with the pitfalls, the woes, the ups, the downs that come with it. Because believe you me, they may not be suffering externally, but you never know what happens behind closed doors. They may be having other struggles that you don't see.
Yeah. That is true. That is true. I think I heard somebody say if everybody put all their problems out onto a table and saw what was out there, they'd probably take theirs back in a heartbeat.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
So true. So true. So, hey, be encouraged. It's not the end of the world. Everything is gonna work out in the end. You just got to take the lessons from it, like Alicia said. Allow yourself to be sharpened and get stronger, and
Yeah.
stay the course and get those
Yep.
accountability partners, like we talked about, to hold you accountable to what you want. So you want your life to change, and you have a vision. So
Yeah.
keep stepping toward it. So
Absolutely.
this has been a great conversation, and I got to ask you my closeout question before we wrap up, and then give you a
Okay.
chance to drop a couple more nuggets. But I really appreciate you coming today.
This is
So
great.
before we end, I want to get your answer to our standard closeout question. So, what does it mean to you to lead a life of legacy?
See, I think about this a lot because I don't have kids. Because for a lot of people, it's easy. My legacy are my children. I don't have children. I have 10 godchildren, but no children of my own. Um, so, my mom always has been telling me for years, we all come with an expiration date. You don't know when it is, but you got one.
Mm-hmm.
And so and my dad used to talk about on your headstone, the dash. The dash is the most important thing on your headstone because that's where you were able to have impact. And so I want to live out the dash on my headstone with as much intentionality and impact as I possibly can have. And so a life of legacy for me is about pouring into others and making a difference in the lives of those folks, living authentically, always being true to myself, and living life to the fullest as an example to others of what having agency over your entire life looks like.
That's a beautiful life, beautiful and
That's my
well
plan.
lived. Love it, love
That's
it,
my plan.
I love it. Alicia, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Any quotes or books you want to leave as far as like tips or inspiration before we go?
Yeah, so one quote that I love that I always tell people is the meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to share it or give it away.
Hmm.
It's absolutely important. And then one of my favorite books that happens to be on my desk is it's a book on wisdom, and it's by Don Miguel Ruiz, Ruiz. And it's a practical guide to personal freedom, and it's called The Four Agreements. And I've read this book maybe 5 times. It's 140 pages, big print.
Quick
So
read. Quick
it's
read.
a quick read,
Yeah.
but it is one of the most impactful books as you think about your journey that I think I've ever had the opportunity to read. So I
Yeah.
just recommend that.
I would agree. Yeah. It definitely a great read.
Yeah.
Thank you for dropping that with us. Alicia Thompson, executive coach. If you need help, talk about accountability partner guidance, reach out to her, let her help you level up and reach that level of success you're looking for. Pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was a great conversation.
Take care.
Bye.